Did you ever see that Woody Allen film where he meets his girlfriend's wacko brother, who says he sometimes gets the urge to drive into oncoming traffic? Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. The Mark V Vauxhall Astra, also known as the Astra H, it's a very common sight on our British roads, but it might just be the best second-hand car for under £2,000. Is it any good? Should you care? Why? Let's find out, shall we? Astra, off we go.
Shortcomings, it's not as if we don't have to wipe away the tears. From time to time we wouldn't lie. And here we are, we'll never be the same, and on the screens of our lives flash words of good songs that we've not yet sung. And we're not worried about the future, and we're not guilty about the past. We're pressing on together into joy that will outlast these sorrows.
So welcome to yet another episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. Today we are in Cheshire. I'm visiting my father-in-law, Jeff. He's very kindly given us the keys to his 2010 Vauxhall Astra 1.4 Active. This generation of Astra is also known as the Astra H, or just a Mark V. So thanks, Jeff. A while ago I made a video saying that the Vauxhall Astra H might well be the best second-hand car for under £2,000. And I told this to Jeff and he said, well, why don't you come and film mine? So yes, this is what we're doing. This particular car, although it's a 2010 registered car, we think it was made in 2009 because the production of this generation of car had finished over at Ellesmere Port, which is very close to here, at the end of the previous year. So before we get into a lot of depth about this wonderful automobile, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, as it really helps us to make these videos more quickly and to make them better. So the Vauxhall Astra was actually first produced in about 1979. So the first ones that were ever made are around 40 years old. They also continued on the line of the Opel Kadett that had been produced in 1963. Vauxhall and Opel have been the same company for many years now. This is why the Astra has this very weird naming scheme. You can either call this a Mark V or an H, because it goes right way back to the first Opel Kadett from 1963 that was known as the Opel Kadett A. Although there was also a Kadett in the 1930s, and that's not part of the naming scheme. So this Mark V Astra actually came out all the way back in 2004 and was a revelation at the time. Nowadays, Astra Mark Vs are just a common piece of street furniture, but after the very dull Astra G, this was a breath of fresh air. If you got the three-door version, or the sport hatch as they're sometimes called, you've got a panoramic sunroof as an option, which looks fantastic. Those of you who were familiar with Top Gear back in the day will remember about that. Other body styles available in the Mark V Astra were a saloon that wasn't available in the UK, a five-door hatchback like this one, the twin top that was like a coupe cabriolet, that's very nice actually, and the estate. The engine choices in an Astra H were a 1.4 with 90 horsepower, then later, like this one, 99 horsepower, a 1.6 with 105 and later 115 horsepower, a 1.8 with 125 then 140 horsepower, a couple of turbocharged engines, a 2 litre with 170 horsepower, later replaced by a 1.6 with 180 horsepower, and a 2 litre with 200 horsepower, and then the completely bonkers VXR with 240 horsepower, otherwise known as the Council Estate Saturday Night Special. One of the things about driving around this part of Cheshire is that there's lots of Vauxhalls. People are very loyal towards the factory that opened in 1963 with the production of the first Viva. You see lots of Corsas and lots of these in particular. Now, the Astra H was not just built at Ellesmere Port, it was also built in places like Germany and Belgium and Poland. And maybe somebody in the comments will tell me how to actually tell where your car was made. But it's interesting to see that people around here, they very, very much love their locally produced cars. The ride and handling of the Mark V Astra are very good actually. The ride is quite smooth, it's not crashy or anything, and also the suspension isn't too soft, so it doesn't roll too much into bends. I wouldn't say it's an exciting drive in particular, but it's perfectly adequate for what most people need. Obviously if you get the VXR and the suspension's very, very firm and the handling's very good and you get torque steer, but in the mainstream models like this 1.4, it's absolutely fine for probably most conditions. The Vauxhall trim levels of the last 15 years have been quite confusing, and the Astra H is no exception to this. At the foot of the range, back in 2009 when this car was made, you had the Club and the Active. This is an Active, and you've got things in an Active like automatic lights, air conditioning, CD player, alloy wheels, things like that, and obviously front electric windows and electric mirrors. If you go further up the range, you get to the Design and Elite models. I really like the Elites. They have a nice piano black centre console for all electric windows and things like that. And then right above that, you had the VXR, which is a bit crazy. And then below the VXR, actually, there are two more sporty derivatives, the SXI and SRI. Although trying to tell those apart, it's quite difficult actually. In terms of refinement, the car's quite quiet. It's got a reasonably nice exhaust note actually, even though this is a 1.4. The seats are quite comfortable. The steering wheel's nice to hold. I don't like these one-touch indicators. They're an absolute pain, but there you go. Another thing that I've noticed about the Astra H's that I've sourced for clients is just how easy they are to fix and how cheap they are to fix. With the 1.4 engine, it's what's called a Family Zero engine, and there's no timing belt to change, which is really good. The Family 1 engines in the 1.6 and 1.8 Astras do have a timing belt, but as long as you keep on top of the maintenance and are sensible about it, most garages will be able to work on an Astra H, which is fantastic, and it won't be very expensive. That's another reason to consider one of these as an affordable car. If you want the last word in excitement, then a standard Vauxhall Astra H just really isn't for you. And also, although the car looked quite nice when it came out, because they're so common, particularly in a colour like this, they don't really stand out very much. But who wants to stand out? You think about that carefully. In terms of rivals for the Mark V Astra, there were cars like the Ford Focus, that's the most obvious one, the Volkswagen Golf, the Hyundai i30, the Kia Ceed, and the Seat Leon. A lot of these cars are also very good, but the Astra tends to be a little bit cheaper than most of them, and reliability is generally pretty good too. A lot of people who I've spoken to who actually own these cars, they really like them, and as I've said, it might not be the most exciting car unless you're looking at, say, a VXR or a turbocharged model, but for just kind of basic transport, for not a lot of money, I don't think you can go far wrong, really.
It's not as if we don't have to wipe away the tears. From time to time we wouldn't lie.
Well, that was okay, I suppose. I mean, this isn't a sports car unless you buy the VXR version, but it's comfortable and it's a nice smooth drive. Anyway, let's look at the car's more practical side. As you can see, we've got the roof box on as well, and have a look in the boot. Oh, not that bong again! Ah! This isn't just a family car, it's also my father-in-law's, so he's got all his tools in the boot. If I open it up, you'll see that it's got a capacity of around 350 litres. Now, there's not much fancy about this. Rather like, you know, the Astra itself, it's not the most fancy car in the world, but yeah, you do get a full-size spare wheel under there, and there's plenty of room. By comparison, boots on, say, a Golf of this era were about 330 litres, and then there were just cars like the Skoda Octavia but were a little bit bigger, but overall this isn't too bad. If I step into the back, it's not too difficult because the roof's quite high. I'm 5'11" and this is my driving position. You can see my knee room is okay. Headroom's actually really good, even in this middle bit. It's not the most luxurious in the back, although amazingly I've got soft touch material in here. I mean, I've got, window winders and just normal simple plastic door pulls, but I've got soft touch rear doors. Yes, finally. If I fold down this seat here, you can see that I just take this headrest off, but that's not too bad, and it folds reasonably flat. 60/40 split folding seats like in all Astras. The door pulls feel quite nice. There's some door bins in the rear for odds and ends. No 12-volt socket or anything, and no armrest on this particular model. But you can get the Elite, which would have part leather seats, or if you want to go sporty, then you could get, I don't know, the VXR, but that's only available as a 3-door, and that's not as practical as a 5-door. It's easy to get into the front of the car, as it is with the back. The driving position is actually really good. The seat goes up and down, it goes forward and back, it reclines, rather with a knob as opposed to a ratchet, which makes it really good to find the ideal position. And this steering wheel adjusts for height and also adjusts for reach, which is really good on a car of this sort of age. If I want to test the practicality of the glove box, I've got my secret mission documents here. And as you can see, the glove box is absolutely enormous. It goes in with no problem at all. That's a first for one of these cars in quite some time. If I pull my documents out again and we try the door bins, you'll see that they're quite shallow and they're a little bit small, but the documents do go in. We've got in this particular model just front electric windows, although obviously you could get 4 in others. We've got electric mirrors. We've actually got automatic headlights in this car, which is a real surprise. I didn't realise that until earlier on today. The materials in here, again, they're quite good. It's got soft touch plastics. All the controls feel very solid. It's quite easy to use. Even the steering wheel feels quite nice, although there are these incredibly annoying one-touch indicators, which is a feature of all Vauxhall models in this particular decade, as well as BMWs, and I absolutely hate them. With the instruments, they're really clear. We've got the speedometer and the rev counter here, as well as the fuel gauge. Strangely enough, in a lot of Vauxhall models of this time, there was no temperature gauge at all. I imagine there's a warning light if it gets too hot, but there's not even a cold light to tell you it's too cold, or rather the engine's not warmed up. I don't know why that is, but everything else is nice and clear. So I just switch the car on for a second. You can see that there's a screen right in the middle of the dashboard. In higher trims that was a lot bigger, and in some you could even get sat nav and a colour screen. It's one of the things that some people don't like about Vauxhalls of this era. The colour is particularly gouge, it's bright orange, but really it isn't too bad. The hazard warning switch is in a good place right up here. The only thing I'd say about the central stack is that the temperature controls are a little bit low down, although I'm sure you get used to that quite quickly. The gearbox in this particular car is a 5-speed manual. There was an automatic available as well. In normally the 1.8s were automatics. The gear shift feels quite nice and precise actually. As Vauxhall gearboxes, when I learned to drive in a Corsa as well as the Saxo that you would have seen, weren't very good. This is actually very nice indeed. The visibility in this car is absolutely fine from the front, although you do feel a little bit dark in here. If you had the 3-door with the optional panoramic windscreen, that would feel great. The rear visibility is not the best. It's typical of kind of cars of this time. Obviously you can't get a reversing camera in this, although in some models you did get parking sensors. One of the things that I've noticed about this car in comparison with others of say 10 years old, this car's almost 10 years old now, is just how nice the switches feel. They feel very high quality. They don't necessarily look the most modern, but they feel really nice. They're very easy to operate. And these days of these touch screens that everybody has, it's nice to get into something which is refreshingly simple like this. In conclusion then, what do I think of the Mark V Vauxhall Astra? Could it possibly be the best second-hand car for under £2,000? Well, actually, for a lot of people, I think so. It's easy to service, it's easy to live with, it's very cheap, it's actually cheap to fix, and if you can live with this slightly bland styling and less than stellar driving dynamics, I think, yes, why not? Oh, excuse me, I'm terribly sorry. You might have identified yourselves and saved us all a bit of aggro. You have completely ruined my coffee break! Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. My name is Joseph Lloyd, I'm an independent vehicle consultant. I find cars for people. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to do that. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. If you wish me to source a car for you, I'd love to do that. My website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Please use the contact me page on my website to get in touch. I've got a Facebook page as well. It's facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Thank you. Hope I stood in the right place. Yes, I did. I just stood in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lloyd Vehicle Consulting YouTube channel.